All right, welcome to The Perspective. We're still talking to the chairman of the Investment Coordinating Board, Mr. Thomas Lembong, and your leadership. What kind of leadership are you bringing into BKPM, and where are you taking BKPM in the next few years?
Well, a few things. I think we want to shake things up a bit in BKPM as well, right? In line with the president's desire to really take a fresh perspective, take a fresh approach.
Yeah.
For example, I feel that traditionally we've been a bit more passive, a bit more reactive. It's true that we are the de facto investor relations department, so
Right.
all the complaints come to us, and we then try to assist investors to resolve those complaints with the ministries or agencies. But I feel we should do more. I feel we should give actual investor guidance because we see so much, right? We see private sector inputs from across industries, right? We get inputs from manufacturing investors, inputs from tourism investors, inputs from infrastructure investors. Well, we should analyze this feedback and systematize it and use it to give to give back to the investors a useful, comprehensive overview. For example, we keep getting investor proposals to invest in more cement manufacturing capacity, right? And yet, we probably have an oversupply of cement right now.
Right.
Now, surprisingly to me, a lot of investors, when I tell them that, they're surprised. They've never been presented with this data that we've gone from shortage 7 years ago to now oversupply. And as a result, the price of cement in Indonesia, which used to be the highest in Asia at $120 per ton, is now fallen by 50% to $60 per ton. So a lot of investors really appreciated it. When I pointed this out, they might want to reconsider whether they really want to go ahead with those. But, for example, we're also pointing out to investors that we're now really gaining momentum on the tourism side. I think tourism arrivals are really growing strongly. And many areas, such as, for example, Manado, are suffering real shortages of hotels and resorts. So I feel we want to be a bit more proactive in issuing actual guidance to investors. Look, you may want to look at this sector because it's booming, right? We see a lot of interest and people making a lot of money. You should consider going there. And those sectors, well, please look again at this data. You may want to reconsider, right? So again, it's not just about the amount of investment, but we want to make sure it goes in the right direction. And we want to make sure it goes to the right sectors, to the right areas. For example, if we get an investor interested in automotive, right? Actually, this is a real story.
Okay.
One Chinese investor wants to set up automotive, and they said we want to go to, to some outer region. And I told them, well, to be very honest, that would probably be a mistake, because the automotive industry is really clustering around east of Jakarta, the Karawang, Cikarang area, and automotive industry works in cluster. Right? You need to become part of the ecosystem, right? So I think providing this kind of useful guidance is something that insights for investors to be able to make truly informed decisions.
Now, you have been receiving a lot of inputs from various sectors, investors. What are you think the most immediate inputs and also actions that you feel that you can advise to the government and for Jokowi's administration to address on immediately in a short term, mid-term?
Right. Well, I've already shared with the president the top 3 complaints of investors are number 1, tax, the tax office. Number 2, regulatory instability and regulatory inconsistency. And number 3, work permits for expatriate workers.
I understand these are the 3 that I think Jokowi's government are actually focusing on, correct?
Correct. So I'm very happy to report that our new Finance Minister, Ibu Sri Mulyani, is doing a great job, I think, trying to reform the tax office, root and branch. Based on her comments in recent weeks, I'm very heartened that we're on the right track.
She's formed a tax and excise reform team specifically to look into this.
And it's actually not about the level of taxation so much as about the attitude of the tax office, right? You can have an adversarial, us against them attitude, or you can have more of a spirit of partnership, right? And you can be very short-term oriented, just meeting target today or short-term targets, or you can take a long-term view, right? Helping to grow the industry so that long-term you get more tax revenues rather than squeezing them in the short term. So again, it's mindset. On the regulatory side, I explained to the president, in advanced countries, regulations actually change very rarely. They only change every few years. And when those regulations change, they're subjected to very intensive public debate. Right? It's a very transparent and open policy discussion in the public. What we like to do is we like to change regulations all the time. Every 6 months we change the regulations, and we do it without prior notice, right? To the surprise and shock of investors and industry. So that makes it very difficult for investors to plan or to operate, right? Because the rules of the game keep changing all the time. Now, ultimately, a lot of this also related to corruption, right? Because the more rules, the more regulations you have, like the more permits you need, the more clarifications you need. Those are all transactional objects potentially. Right?
As opposed to having a very transparent system there and then.
Or simple, right? Imagine if the rules were very simple and clear, you wouldn't need us very much, right? And that gives us less opportunity to extort money or illegal levies. We have to be very honest about that, I think.
And how is the 3-day permit system or processing that is currently going on under the BKPM's watch and coordination?
It's been a great experience. It's been a real breakthrough. I think, again, just to prove that it can be done, right? Permits that used to take 10 months, now can be done in 3 hours. So that's a very drastic.
The 3 hours, correct.
And I think the key is not to stop there, right? We need to expand it because right now the 3-hour investment license is limited to a certain subset, but hopefully we can expand the criteria so it covers more of the types of investments that are coming in.
And do you see a substantial hike post this 3-hour, just based on this one particular regulation when it comes to just processing permits?
I do think so. I think it's done a lot to, again, turn around investor perception towards Indonesia. It's a kind of spirited, clear, simple message that investors love, right? Getting something done from 10 months to 3 hours. And investors acknowledge that it's a limited subset. It doesn't cover everything. But investors, being business people, also understand that you do reforms batch by batch, right? In stages. The important thing is you start, you send a very clear signal, and then you consistently follow that up with further reforms and further, one-stop shop phase 2 or one-stop shop phase 3. Investors understand that it has to be done in stages and that it will take time.
While we're on the subject, Chairman, the issue of foreign workers entering Indonesia of the recent years now, it is BKPM being the main gateway for investors to come into Indonesia and making sure that does BKPM, what kind of measures that have been taken or will be taken to ensure that investors adhere to the rules and regulations that Indonesia has presented them? May that be on permitting on the business permits and then workers, experts that they're bringing in. How do we make sure that they adhere to that and we don't hear all this overflowing stories on issues of having foreign bringing in their own foreign workers into the country?
Well, Florence, I think, the truth is that this issue of international workers has become a political weapon. The facts don't support this notion that we're overflowing with foreign workers. As we all know, we're a country of 254 million people. Records show that the number of foreign workers in this country is not more than 80,000. I think it would be ridiculous for us, this great country of 254 million people, to be scared of a few tens of thousands.
Be concerned by,
Exactly. So it's still a very, very tiny sliver of the total number of workers in this country. Secondly, we have to be consistent, right? We're asking investors to invest hundreds of millions of dollars into the country. It's only natural that they want to send their own people to make sure that the factory is properly built, right? That the equipment is properly installed.
Foundation is well laid out.
Exactly. To safeguard the huge amounts of money that they're putting in.
Right.
Those foreign workers are virtually always temporary. Those workers also want to go home for the most part. And the investors also want to send them home as quickly as possible because it's actually expensive to keep international workers overseas. If you look at projects over the last 10 years, virtually all projects show that after 3, 4, 5 years, local staff account for 70, 80 to 90% of the workers, right? You might still have 10 or 20% international workers, and we want them. We want them for their international expertise. We want them for their international network. But in the beginning, we have to be realistic, right? We have to be consistent that, it makes sense. We're asking people to invest hundreds of millions, even billions of dollars. It's natural that they want to send their own people to watch over the investment, make sure it's executed properly. Again, I can virtually guarantee that those international workers will return home to their country of origin over the years. They have a high urgency to train local workers to take over as quickly as possible.
Like you said, it's a matter of perception, of numbers that the public has to understand, and well-informed. When we come back on the last segment, we'll talk about trade partnerships with Thomas Lembong and Perspective. Stay with us.